Shoghi Effendi Rabbani, better known as Shoghi Effendi, was the guardian and appointed head of the Baha'i faith from 1921 until his death in 1957. After the death of Abdul Baha in 1921, the leadership of the Baha'i community changed from that of a single individual to an administrative order with executive and legislative branches, the head of each being the guardianship and the Universal House of Justice. Shoghi Effendi was referred to as the guardian, and had the authority to interpret the writings of the three central figures of the religion and define the sphere of legislative authority. His writings are effectively limited to commentaries on the works of the central figures, and broad directives for the future. Future hereditary guardians were permitted in the Baha'i scripture by appointment from one to the next, but a prerequisite that appointees be male descendants of Baha'u'llah left no suitable living candidates, and Shoghi Effendi died without making an appointment. The Universal House of Justice, the only institution authorized to adjudicate on situations not covered in Scripture, later announced that it could not legislate to make possible the appointment of a successor to Shoghi Effendi. Shoghi was the first and last person acknowledged as guardian of the Baha'i faith. Background: born in Akka in the Sanjak of Acre in March 1897, Shoghi Effendi was related to the Bab through his father, Mirza Hadi Shirazi, and to Baha'u'llah through his mother, Iyayih Khanum, the eldest daughter of Abdul Baha. Abdul Baha, who provided much of his initial training, greatly influenced Shoghi Effendi from the early years of his life. Shoghi Effendi learned prayers from his grandfather Abdul Baha, who encouraged him to chant. Abdul Baha also insisted that people address the child as Shoghi Effendi, rather than simply as Shoghi, as a mark of respect towards him. From his early years, Shoghi Effendi was introduced to the suffering which accompanied the Baha'is in Akka, including the attacks by Mirza Muhammad Ali against Abdul Baha. As a young boy, he was aware of the desire of Sultan Abdul Hamid to banish Abdul Baha to the deserts of North Africa, where he was expected to perish. At one point, Shoghi Effendi was warned not to drink coffee in the homes of any of the Baha'is in the fear that he would be poisoned. Tablet from Abdul Baha. As the eldest grandson of Abdul Baha, Shoghi Effendi from his earliest childhood had a special relationship with his grandfather. Dr. Baghdadi reports that when Shoghi Effendi was only 5 years old, he pestered his grandfather to write a tablet for him, which was common practice for Abdul Baha. He wrote the following for his grandson: "He is God. Oh my Shoghi, I have no time to talk. Leave me alone. You said right, I have written. What else should be done? Now is not the time for you to read and write. It is the time for jumping about and chanting, oh my God. Therefore, memorize the prayers of the Blessed Beauty and chant them that I may hear them, because there is no time for anything else." Shoghi Effendi then set out to memorize a number of prayers, and chanted them as loud as he could. This caused family members to ask Abdul Baha to quieten him down, a request which he apparently refused. Education: Shoghi Effendi received his early education at home with the other children in the household, then attended a French Christian Brothers school in Haifa, and later boarded at another Catholic school in Beirut. Shoghi Effendi later attended the Syrian Protestant College for his final years of high school and first years of university, where he earned an arts degree in 1918. He reports being very unhappy in school and often returned on vacations to Haifa to spend time with Abdul Baha. During his studies, he dedicated himself to mastering English, adding this language to the Persian, Turkish, Arabic and French languages in which he was already fluent, so that he could translate the letters of Abd al-Baha and serve as his secretary. After studying at the American University of Beirut, he later went to Balliol College, Oxford in England, where he matriculated in economics and social sciences, while still perfecting his translation skills. Death of Abd al-Baha and guardianship. The issue of successorship to Abd al-Baha was in the minds of early Baha'is, and although the Universal House of Justice was an institution mentioned by Baha'u'llah, the institution of the guardianship was not introduced until the will and testament of Abd al-Baha was publicly read after his death. Baha'u'llah's own will mentions Mirza Muhammad Ali as following Abd al-Baha in leadership, but Baha'is excommunicated him as a covenant breaker and shunned him. While studying in England, on 29 November 1921, the news of Abd al-Baha's death reached Shoghi Effendi, which, according to Wellesley Tudor, the deliverer of the cable, left him in a state of collapse. After spending a couple of days with John Esselmont, and after some passport difficulties, he sailed from England on December 16 and arrived in Haifa on 29 December. A few days later he opened Abd al-Baha's will and testament, which was addressed to Shoghi Effendi. In the will, Shoghi Effendi found that he had been designated as the sign of God, the chosen branch, the guardian of the cause of God. He also learned that he had been designated as this when he was still a small child. As guardian, he was appointed as head of the religion, someone whom the Baha'is had to look to for guidance. Abd al-Baha's will and testament is considered one of the three charters of the Baha'i administrative order, and in it Abd al-Baha laid down the authority of the guardian and the Universal House of Justice, the elected governing body of the Baha'i faith that had been written about by Baha'u'llah, and had not yet been established. The guardian of the cause of God, as well as the Universal House of Justice to be universally elected and established, are both under the care and protection of the Arbor Beauty. Whatsoever they decide is of God. Whoso obeyeth him not, neither obeyeth them, hath not obeyed God. Whoso rebelleth against him and against him hath rebelled against God. Whoso opposeth him hath opposed God. Whoso contendeth with him hath contended with God. Whoso disputeth with him hath disputed with God. Whoso denieth him hath denied God. Whoso disbelieveth in him hath disbelieved in God. Whoso deviateth, separateth himself and turneth aside from him hath in truth deviated, separated himself and turned aside from God. Shoghi Effendi later expressed to his wife and others that he had no foreknowledge of the existence of the institution of guardianship, least of all that he was appointed as guardian. The most he expected was perhaps, because he was the eldest grandson, Abd al-Baha might have left instructions as to how the Universal House of Justice was to be elected, and he might have been designated as convener of the gathering which would elect it. Accomplishments. From the time of his appointment as guardian until his death, the Baha'i faith grew from 100,000 to 400,000 members, capitalizing on prior growth and setting the stage for more, and the countries in which Baha'is had representation went from 35 to 250. As guardian and head of the religion, Shoghi Effendi communicated his vision to the Baha'is of the world through his numerous letters and his meetings with pilgrims to Palestine. During the 1920s he first started to systematize and extend the Baha'i administration throughout the world. The Baha'i community was relatively small and undeveloped when he assumed leadership of the religion, and he strengthened and developed it over many years to support the administrative structure envisioned by Abd al-Baha. Under Shoghi Effendi's direction, national spiritual assemblies were formed, and many thousands of local spiritual assemblies were created. During the 1930s he worked on projects translating the works of Baha'u'llah into English. Starting in 1937, he set into motion a series of systematic plans to establish Baha'i communities in all countries. A 10-year crusade was carried out from 1953 to 1963 with the aim of electing the Universal House of Justice as its paramount aim. Starting in the late 1940s, after the independence of Israel, he started to develop the Baha'i World Center in Haifa, including the construction of the superstructure of the Shrine of the Bab and the building of the International Archives, as well as beautifying the gardens at Baja, where the Shrine of Baha'u'llah is located, as well as developing plans and resources to raise several of the continental Baha'i houses of worship around the world. These plans continued through the 1950s. In the 1950s he also continued building the Baha'i administration, establishing in 1951 the International Baha'i Council to act as a precursor to the Universal House of Justice, as well as appointing 32 living hands of the cause Baha'is appointed to the highest rank of service available, whose main function was to propagate and protect the religion. He also acted as the official representative of the religion to legal authorities in Israel, as well as designated other representatives to work with the UN in a more secular cause. Prior to World War II, he supported the work of restoration forester Richard Street Barb Baker to reforest Palestine, introducing him to religious leaders from the major faiths of the region, from whom backing was secured for reforestation. Translations and writings. In his lifetime, Shoghi Effendi translated into English many of the writings of the Bab, Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha, including The Hidden Words in 1929, the Kitab Iqan in 1931, Gleanings in 1935, and Epistle to the Son of the Wolf in 1941. He also translated such historical texts as the Dawn Breakers. His significance is not just that of a translator, but he was also the designated and authoritative interpreter of the Baha'i writings. His translations therefore are a guideline for all future translations of the Baha'i writings. The vast majority of his writings were in the style of letters with Baha'is from all parts of the globe. These letters, of which 17,500 have been collected thus far and are believed to number a total of 30,000, ranged from routine correspondence regarding the affairs of Baha'is around the world to lengthy letters to the Baha'is of the world addressing specific themes. Some of his longer letters include World Order of Baha'u'llah, regarding the nature of Baha'i administration, Advent of Divine Justice, regarding teaching the religion, and Promised Day Has Come regarding Baha'u'llah's letters to world leaders. Other letters included statements on Baha'i beliefs, history, morality, principles, administration and law. He also wrote obituaries of some distinguished Baha'is. Many of his letters to individuals and assemblies have been compiled into several books which stand out as significant sources of literature for Baha'is around the world. The only actual book he ever wrote was God Passes By in 1944 to commemorate the centennial anniversary of the religion. The book, which is in English, is an interpretive history of the first century of the Babi and Baha'i faiths. A shorter Persian-language version was also written. Leadership. As a young student of 24, Shoghi Effendi was initially shocked at the appointment his guardian. He was also mourning the death of his grandfather, to whom he had great attachment. The trauma of this culminated in him making retreats to the Swiss Alps. However, despite his youth, Shoghi Effendi had a clear idea of the goal he had for the religion. Oxford-educated and Western in his style of dress, Shoghi Effendi was a stark contrast to his grandfather. Abdul Baha. He distanced himself from the local clergy and notability, and traveled little to visit Baha'is. Unlike his grandfather, correspondence and pilgrims were the way that Shoghi Effendi conveyed his messages. His talks are the subject to a great number of pilgrim notes. He also was concerned with matters dealing with Baha'i belief and practice. As guardian, he was empowered to interpret the writings of Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha, and these were authoritative and binding, as specified in Abdul Baha's will. His leadership style was, however, quite different from that of Abdul Baha, in that he signed his letters to the Baha'is as "your true brother," and he did not refer to his own personal role, but instead to the institution of the guardianship. He requested that he be referred in letters and verbal addresses always as Shoghi Effendi, as opposed to any other appellation. He also distanced himself as a local notable. He was critical of the Baha'is referring to him as a holy personage, asking them not to celebrate his birthday or have his picture on display. Private life. Shoghi Effendi's personal life was largely subordinate to his work as guardian of the religion. His lack of secretarial support with the mass of correspondence had left a pattern of hard work in Haifa interspersed with occasional summer breaks to Europe, in the early years often to the Swiss Alps. In 1929 and 1940 he also traveled through Africa from south to north. Shoghi Effendi had a great love for the English language. Carrying with him a short notebook, he would note down words and sentences he liked. He was an avid fan of music and English literature, and enjoyed reading the King James Bible. His favorite book was The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. Whilst a young man studying in Oxford, Shoghi Effendi was part of a debating society and enjoyed playing tennis. He was noted for speaking English in subtle received pronunciation, and Persian in an Isfahani dialect, inherited from his grandmother. Shoghi Effendi held Iranian nationality throughout his life and traveled on an Iranian passport, although he never visited Iran. Marriage. In March 1937, Shoghi Effendi married Mary Maxwell, entitled Ruhi Khanum, a Canadian. She was the only child of May Maxwell, a disciple of Abdul Baha, and William Sutherland Maxwell, a Canadian architect. Shoghi Effendi had first met Mary as a girl when she came on pilgrimage with her mother, in 1923. Mary was an active Baha'i teacher and youth worker, and a letter written to Shoghi Effendi described her as a beautiful and most refreshing girl to know. Whilst on her third pilgrimage in 1937, the two began a discreet courtship. Then herself 26 years old, Mary was a tall, athletic woman. The couple married in the room of Ruhi Khanum in the house of Abdul Baha in Haifa. The ceremony was a short, simple and quiet one in which Ruhi Khanum wore black. Very few knew the wedding was taking place apart from the witnesses and a small group of residents of Haifa. Therefore the marriage came as a great surprise to the worldwide Baha'i community when the mother of Shoghi Effendi cabled the Baha'is, "Announce Assembly's celebration marriage beloved guardian. Inestimable honor conferred upon handmaid of Baha'u'llah Ruhi Khanum Miss Mary Maxwell. Union of East and West proclaimed by Baha'i faith cemented. Zae mother of guardian." While Shoghi Effendi and Ruhi Khanum never had children, Ruhi Khanum became his constant companion and helpmate. In 1941, she became Shoghi Effendi's principal secretary in English. After Shoghi Effendi's death, Ruhi Khanum published parts of her personal diaries to show glimpses of Shoghi Effendi's life. She recalls a great deal of pain and suffering caused by his immediate family, and Baha'is in Haifa. If the friends only knew how the master and the guardian both suffered through the caliber of the local Baha'is. Some of them were good, but some were rotten. It's as if, when someone was unsound in the covenant, they attacked the very body of the manifestation, or the exemplar, or the guardian. I have seen this. It is like poison. He recovers from it, but it causes him untold suffering, and it was from such things that the master described himself in his will as this broken-winged bird. They, Abdul Baha's family, have gone a long way to crushing every ounce of spirit out of the guardian. By nature he is cheerful and energetic, but the perpetual strife of life with the master's family have clouded over him. Shoghi Effendi has been abused. That is the only word for it. Abused, abused, abused. By now he has reached the point of a man fighting with his back to the wall. He says he will fight it out to the last round. Throughout Shoghi Effendi's life, nearly all remaining family members and descendants of Abdul Baha were expelled by him as covenant breakers when they didn't abide by Shoghi Effendi's request to cut contact with covenant breakers, as specified by Abdul Baha. Other branches of Baha'u'llah's family had already been declared covenant breakers in Abdul Baha's will and testament. At the time of his death, there were no living descendants of Baha'u'llah that remained loyal to him.